I'm Jay Thomas, and welcome to Bald Tires, a proud member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Today, we're picking up where we left off with Alan Thomas, my guest. Now, if you missed part one of this podcast, I suggest, wherever you found this one, you go back and find part one, because what we're talking about here is going to make a lot more sense. But Alan has had dozens and dozens of cool cars, and he's done a lot of work on them himself. He's done a lot of customizing himself. He's a very talented guy. We're going to keep going with the stories of a few of the cool cars he's owned, and for pictures, you can always go to jthomasauto.ca. I'm Jay Thomas. Thanks for listening to Bald Tires, because when you make great memories, you make bald tires. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is proudly supported by Connexus. Connexus Credit Union is all about their members. Improving their financial well-being drives everything they do. And that's not just something they say, it's a promise that's delivered by over 900 employees across Saskatchewan. Their employees are members too, and they've been there, so they're committed to making your money work for you. The banking industry needs to change, and Connexus is changing it for everyone, because Connexus cares. Visit connexus.ca to learn more. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is also supported by Direct West. Are you a business owner looking for new avenues to promote your business? Direct West's digital billboards are a great opportunity to highlight a new product, new promotion, or anything else you'd like your customers to know about. You can get local, expert marketing help for your business at directwest.com. All right, let's pick things up right now with Alan. Now, the other car in your backyard is a Studebaker.
Right.
That's a 53, right?
It's a 53 lowboy.
Wow, what a neat car this is, too.
And these cars, people ask me, well, what was it? They were champions and presidents and all those kind of names. And I really honestly don't remember what the car started out as. The car started out, we were going to make a dragster out of it way back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And we had this car, and it had a nail head in it. It had a 322, I guess those things were.
Okay.
Nail head.
Yep.
In it, and then hooked it to a Ford transmission out of a flathead so that you had the overdrive.
Yep.
And that's what it was, and it was going to be a drag car, but it didn't run all that well. Every time you ran down the track and let the gas off, it blew the transmission. Because they apparently weren't good for that kind of RPMs. But anyway, it was an easy fix. You just dropped another one in, and they were everywhere in those days. So that was it for that. Kind of made it into a hot rod, and actually my brother drove it a lot more than I. It was actually my brother's car more than it was mine. It was kind of a family car.
Yep.
And dropped it in. It was painted bright orange in those days, and you made it into a hot rod. Drove it around for a few years. I was already living in Meota, so he had it in Nipawin, and he sold it, and. So it was one of these cars that every time a bunch of buddies get together, we say, well, I wonder what happened to that car.
Yeah, right.
Wonder what happened to that car. Wonder where it was. I wonder, is it crushed? Is it gone? Whatever. And it was not, nobody really knew where it was. And then I get a phone call about, it would have been in about 1989. I get a phone call out of the blue and said, guess what we found? It was some guys from White Fox had found it while they were out hunting. And
no.
And what had happened was they pushed it over a ravine by Squaw Rapids, and that's where it was.
Wow.
And they took pictures of it, and in those days it took a long time to get it developed and stuff, and they took pictures of it at the time, and they took it into Nipawin to a guy by the name of Les McGurr, who was guy I grew up with and a good friend. They didn't know what it was because it was all dechromed. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing that said it was Studebaker, and people don't really know what Studebakers are unless they got that big round thing in the front.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, that's what it was, and he told them, Les told them what it was, and said, "I'll bet you Alan would like to have that car back." So they phoned me up, and he phoned me up and said, "Guess what I found?" And he said, "For $600, you can have it." And I said, "We'll be right there." So we were racing. The trailer and everything was right in the yard. I had Northway Esso at that time, and the trailer and we were racing stock cars. So the trailer and everything was right there. So we just jumped in the truck and drove down and bought it.
Wow.
Just like that. We were there in 3 hours.
And was it trashed?
It was fairly trashed. The back end, it wasn't as bad as one would have thought. They'd pushed it in with a front end loader or something in the back, so they'd pushed in the back end of it pretty badly. The interior stuff was gone. So yeah, it was a little bit rough, but it wasn't terrible.
You've resurrected some pretty destitute vehicles though, and put them right back onto the road.
Oh yes.
and customize them, and you've gone from nothing to everything.
So I'd hate to back up a little bit on you, Jamie, but
No,
I'd like to bring up the 54 Ford convertible.
Yeah.
That car, I lived in Meota, and it was at the time, and it was in a farmer's field, and the only thing good on it, the interior was gone, the roof was gone, everything was gone. But these cars are really, really rare, and it was kind of in a swamp. So I went and asked, and the guy whose field it was on was kind of a friend of mine. So I said, "Can I have that car?" And he gave it to me, is what he did. So we took it, and I worked on that thing for about 4 years, and I restored it right back to normal, right back to what it was.
Wow.
So that's one of the ones that were really, really bad.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the 59 Oldsmobile later. I
That's
think.
coming up, in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got through the two that are in the yard now. Again, go to jthomasauto.ca for pictures because you can see them. I got some snaps of that. The next one on our list, because we're kind of working our way through, is one of 151, a 55 Ford Crown or Mercury Crown Meteor. Another Meteor, but a 55 this time.
Yeah, it's actually a Crown Victoria.
Crown Victoria, sorry.
Yes, that one's a Crown Victoria. That one, I was on the telephone with a buddy of mine, and we were talking away, and he's another shifter. His name's Ron Berkey.
Yep.
And we were talking on the phone, and all of a sudden, he had his computer on, obviously, and his wife said, "Look at that beautiful car." And I said, "What is it, Ron?" And he says, "Well, there's a Crown Victoria on here for sale." And I said, "What?" Because I'd always been looking for one.
Mm-hmm.
And he... And so I turned my computer on, and there was this 55 Crown Victoria, and it didn't look that bad in the picture, but it wasn't really that good. But anyway, it looked really good in the picture. So I got off the phone with Ron and phoned the guy right away, and he was in Indian Head, and I phoned him and said, "I'm interested in your car. I'll be down tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what it was. I think it was $12,000 or something. I can't remember the real price, but something like that. And I said, "I'll be down tomorrow for it. I'll be there by 10 o'clock in the morning." And it had just come up, so he was getting all kinds of calls.
Sure, of course.
But anyway, I got down there, and he was a really nice guy. He was an older fella. He actually had two 56 Crown Victorias that were done, and he had lots of cars, and really nice guy. And so we got talking. I spent, probably, I bet you I spent 5 hours there with him. and yeah, it was really interesting. It was a really interesting place. Anyway, he sold me the car, and I think he'd knocked $1,000 off or something. I can't really remember what the deal was. Anyway, so he sells me the car, and then he says, I go up to Saskatoon. He had a trucking company, and he says, I go up to Saskatoon a lot with the trailers and stuff. He said, "I'll just throw it on the trailer and bring it to you," which was super nice of the guy.
Yeah.
And so that's what he did. He threw it on the trailer because it was kind of drivable, but not really. So he threw it on the trailer and brought it to me, and I tore it right down to nothing. I wanted to build it. I really wanted to build it like it was 1964 and I had money. It was my incentive on this car.
So like as if somebody had done it 10 years after it was new, kind of thing.
And you were a teenager in 1964.
Yeah.
And you actually had the cash to do it. So that's what I did. So I dropped the back end and
cool
and put the moon discs on it and run side pipes on it, and I put a Continental kit on it and skirts and the aerials on the back fenders and all this kind of stuff and painted it red and white and did the interior red and white and I think the car there was only 151 of them made, so It was a really, really rare car. And we thought it was the one that the car that the Dragons actually gave away way back in the day.
Oh, really?
And we never really matched the serial numbers, but there's no way that it could have been anything else but, I think.
Really?
We all determined what it was. They couldn't find the serial number. They had it in the insurance, but they couldn't find the insurance thing. Mm-hmm. So I believe that's really was the car that was originally given away by the Dragons.
That's pretty cool.
Chances are of it not being is pretty slim. Anyhow, I got it all set up and stuff. got it running really well and everything. But it was, the reason I sold it was it wasn't a lot of fun to drive.
No.
It was a lot more fun building that car than it was driving it, because turning the steering wheel 14 times to turn a corner and and stuff like that, and step on the brakes and maybe it'll stop, because the brakes were all those drum brakes in those days.
No power brakes either.
No, and it had one pipe to the reservoir, so you were always in danger that if something happened, you were gonna go. It wasn't gonna stop.
Yeah, that was it.
So anyway, it wasn't a lot of fun to drive. So I sold it, and that was that. But it was a lot of fun to get all those parts from all over the place. And
no kidding.
And there's a place in Vancouver that about the only ones that make Continental kits now.
Mm-hmm.
And they built it for me. They built me that Continental kit. And it was a beautiful kit that they made for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they, everybody's been really good about getting me parts and things like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, we're moving up to 1959 now.
Okay.
There's a couple. We're gonna get to an olds in a second, but there's a 59 Ford we got to talk about.
Okay, that was the one I didn't do, and maybe should have. It was a 59 Ford, and a friend of mine had that car. Actually, Pete Thiessen out at Osler had that car.
Yeah, Pete. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had that car. And he was selling it, and he always said, Alan, you should do this car. And I said, yeah, I should do this car. And another friend of mine, Tim Roden, and I were out there one night, and one thing led to another, and I bought the car. But anyhow,
speaking of Tim, actually, he was my first guest in this podcast. So
Yeah,
if you want to hear more from Tim, you can go to episode 1 of Bald Tires, and you're going to hear Tim's whole story. But sorry, I digress, Alan.
And he's worth listening to.
Oh yeah, he's lots of fun too.
Anyway, Tim and I were out there. I forget what we were doing, but anyhow, we were out at Pete's place, and he had the 59 Ford there, and one thing led to another, so I bought it. But at the same time, I was building a 63 Ford, and I was building something else. So I had 3 projects on the go already, and so I kind of put this one on the shelf, and a guy from Tisdale who had done a 57 came by, and wanted the car and offered me a good price for it. So I sold it to him. So I did a little bit of work. I did some work on it.
Mm-hmm.
I straightened some of the body out. I got the motor running with the help of another shifter, Kelvin Jansen, who I'm sure you'll get around to one of these times.
Calvin's going to be my guest next week.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's got.
Kelvin's got some good stories.
Anyway, Kelvin got my carburetor working, and we got it running, and so when he came along and offered me a good price for it, I sold it to him, but. On the other side of it, he hasn't done that car yet, so it's still in the back of my mind. Maybe I should get it back, but we'll see what happens with that one.
There's always more time for that, right?
Yes.
Okay, the big one that you're really thrilled about was a 59 Olds 2-door.
Oh, yeah. 59 Oldsmobile 2-door hardtop.
Tell me the whole story. Where did it come from, and what did you do with it?
Yeah, that one was a car that they're really rare also. They're one of those ones with bubble tops.
Yep.
Anyway. What happened with that one was, I was driving again for Kindersley Transport, and it was just outside of Maidstone, the car.
Mm-hmm.
There was a truck stop out there that was kind of like a motel, kind of a thingy.
Yeah.
And he had a bunch of cars out there, and he brought this Oldsmobile. I saw it sitting there, and what it had been sitting in the field for 28 years. This car had been sitting in the field.
Holy. And
the license plate on it was 8 years old too. So it was sitting there, and he dragged it out and stuck it by his motel. So I drove by it a few times, and I said, man, somebody should do something with that car. and because it was so rare. But I hadn't really got out and looked at it. so anyway, I eventually stopped. I'd gone by it a few times. I eventually went in, and I kind of knew the guys, and I knew him to see him, and he kind of knew me. So I said, will you sell me that car? And he said, well, a guy in BC gave me a down payment on that car already, so I really can't.
Oh.
So again, I went by it for probably another 6 weeks, And I was at home, and I thought sitting there, and so I phoned him, and I said, "What's going on with that car?" And he said, "You know what, Alan? I'll send the guy back his deposit, and I'll sell it to you."
No,
Yeah,
really?
So that's how I wound up with the car. And again, he was a mud racer, and he had a trailer and stuff, and he came to Saskatoon quite a bit. So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just throw it on the trailer and bring it to you." So he brought me this thing, and my neighbors are all out there. This thing's huge. These things are huge.
Yeah, big car.
And so he brings it down the back alley. And all my neighbors are out looking at this thing and going, "Oh no, this is gonna be a nightmare. You're never gonna fix this thing." So anyhow, I get it in the yard, and it's full. And absolutely full of mouse turds and grain. I mean, when I say full, I mean right level with the doors, and the headliner's down on the seats, and it's right, and the whole thing, all under the hood, all under the dash, all in the trunk. Everything is full of this stuff, and I'm scared a lot. I was going to say something else, but I'm scared a lot of the dust, huh? So what I did was I took the hose and I just filled the whole car full of water. Just filled it full of water, and then I got in there with a shovel and shoveled all the mud out into the thing, and that's what it was. So
oh my gosh.
So and I figured, the floor is going to be shot in this thing. It's going to be terrible. And I got down to the floor, and there was only one place that was soft, and it was where the muffler was. So I
really?
Yeah. So we cut that out. I cut that out and welded in a piece there. The seats we took out, and we actually used the frames of the seats.
Oh wow!
They were repairable. The stuff on it wasn't, of course.
No.
But the seats were actually repairable, and the springs and stuff were. So we actually used those. So we got it, and it had a 371 engine in it, and tried. I tried everything to get that thing unstuck, like unbelievable amount of stuff. And I couldn't get it unstuck, so I went out to another friend of mine, a scout, Rick Means, out to his place where he's got scads of cars, everywhere. So we pulled a 394 out of a Starlight, not a Starlight coupe, but a Buick out there, and pulled that 390. I guess it was an Oldsmobile, and brought it in, and that's what I used in the car was the 394. They came with 394s or 371s. So,
okay.
So it was
still a period correct engine for
exactly. It was a 64 engine, but period correct certainly. And not only that, when we hooked it all up and figured and got working on it, we got the transmission to work. So we actually used the transmission that was sitting out there forever in the car.
Really?
Yeah. So it was an automatic, but yeah, we did.
Unbelievable.
So that was what we did with that. Got the interior done by J.C. Whitney.
Okay.
Back in the day, they sold interiors.
Yeah.
And guys down in the States are really nice guys for going out and scouting stuff for you. You just talk to these people, and they're a big company, or I don't know if they are anymore, but they were a huge big company, and they scouted around and got me the seats and stuff, and the door panels and stuff for that car, and got them, and they got them made, through themselves, huh?
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and send them back. That's the kind of people that actually and you're actually not dealing with the company itself. You're kind of dealing with a guy. Yeah. And he's able to pull this all together.
Yep.
So that's a whole lot different than it is here in Canada.
No kidding.
But but anyhow, they made me the interior for it. They also made me the headliner for the car, and gradually we got it all. It took me about 4 years to get it. The car was actually white and green, but I didn't particularly like the green. Yep. So the color on it is from a Prowler, a Dodge Prowler.
Oh, cool.
The gold, where it was green before I painted it gold, and it was from a Dodge Prowler is where it,
there's pictures. Go see the pictures. jthomasauto.ca. I cannot believe what you're telling me. How bad that car was to how good it turned out.
I'll tell
you
the
stuff you've shown me.
I'll tell you another thing that was even more amazing. The grass had eaten the back quarters right out of it, and had eaten a lot of it out. So I made the back quarters, but I couldn't tell where the wheel wells were. I mean, I couldn't. The wheel wells were all gone.
Right.
So I got a picture a calendar picture, and I measured from the, I kind of blew it up in my mind, and I measured, where it should be, where everything should be on the calendar.
Yeah.
And then that's how I did
Used it as a scale.
Yeah, that's right. I scaled it up, and that's how I made those wheel wells. I often wondered if you got fender skirts for it, if they would fit. But that's how I built the quarter panels.
That's really
and
cool.
I bet, and the one lucky thing about that 59 Olds was it's round. There wasn't a whole lot of sharp lines in it.
Nice.
And I actually bent the panels on my knee.
Really?
Yeah, the ones by the door and going back there, I actually did them on my knee.
Oh my gosh, Alan, that's crazy. Well, it's always stuff like that is incredible, and work like that I think is pretty neat, because it was the same thing. I was a kid back in high school. I had this old Honda Civic that was my grandfather's, but it was well rusty by the time I was in high school. An early '80s Honda Civic, and I got rocker panels and supposed to be rear quarters, which are only only this big.
Yeah.
And I'm holding my hands up. They're less than a foot long, right? Like they're maybe 6 or 8 inches long. And I got rear fender edges because that was all pretty rusty. Well, I was a 15-year-old kid in my driveway, so I was using a rivet gun, just putting them on. I didn't really cut anything out. We just added more and bonded over top of it. But the one rear quarter was on back order and never showed up ever. It never did.
Yeah.
So, I got one, and it was sort of a triangle piece of metal, because the inner fender came down, the inside was there, and then the outside was shaped, kind of protruded out. So it was almost like a little triangle. Well, there was nothing left. There was no triangle at all. It all rusted,
gone.
just smithereens, gone, just disappeared. Well, got to make something, because one side's got one, so I got to make the other. So I actually got, my dad had some leftover rain gutter.
Oh, yeah.
Aluminum stuff.
Sure.
And I flattened it out and bent it out and shaped it and cut it and put it together and stuck it on and made myself a quarter panel.
Sure.
Hey, but it was rust proof, right? Aluminum's never going to rust again.
That's right. And it filled the hole really good.
And you know what? You couldn't tell a difference between the one I made and the one that came with it, because I just copied it but made the other side. So.
Yeah, you got to use a little bit of ingenuity in this. And you speak of a rivet gun. I use the rivet gun quite a bit when I to hold things.
Yep.
What I'll do is I'll rivet the part on first, because sometimes you got to alter it, and it's a lot easier doing it with rivets than it is. And not only that, it holds them where you want it. So when you're welding, it's not moving around or whatever.
Right.
And there's a lot of places where you can't clip it or anything. So the rivets work really well.
They do. Yeah. Okay, so that is the 59 Olds. Go see pictures, jthomasato.ca. We're moving into the 60s now. I think the first 60 we're going to talk about is, let's pick one. I think we're going to 65, and there's a Comet convertible Caliente.
Okay, the Comet convertible Caliente is another one that was an estate car. It was pretty tough. The quarters were battered on it. They had already put the Mustang engine in it. It had a Mustang HO engine in it.
Oh, cool.
And they had already done that. The guys were drag racers. He was a drag racer by trade. And so that part was done. The interior was really ragged. And so I put a new interior and stuff in it. Did the quarters, painted it. And it came out relatively good, but it was really fast. Like you could smoke that thing forever. It was a lot of fun to drive. Not much more on. I changed the grill and some of the interior, the dash, but not a whole lot of work done on that one.
No.
That was more fun to drive than it was to build. Not very many I say that about. And that's what happened to the Oldsmobile too, going back to 59 Olds. Once it was done, it was another one of those 14 steering wheel deals. So that's why I have to sell some stuff to get some more stuff.
Yep.
Get the next project.
Sure.
So that's what happens a lot of this time. You do one and then you drive it for a bit and then you sell it so you can get on to the next project.
Well, that's obviously, what you really enjoy, Alan, is actually putting these things together.
Yeah, I think
the artistry of it.
Yeah, I think more than even the driving of them. I I liked, and again, going back to the S10 has made them really, really drivable too.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So you're away from that old style stuff. I remember I had a few 50 Meteors, and they didn't drive that well. So I'm happy with what they do now. So
there's a car that you had that, again, you've done the same thing. You bought it. It was in rough shape. You put it all back together and you sold it. And it's one that I got to see kind of happen. You put it together and brought it out to the car shows. A 65 Buick Wildcat.
Yeah, that was a good car.
That was a cool car.
Yeah, the guys that had it was actually painted umpteen shades of silver. When I got it, it was really, really tough. It was a car that the only reason I bought it was a car that I never really pictured. It had an SS interior in it, basically the SS like in the Chevys and stuff, with the bucket seats, the console.
I think it's called a GS interior, right?
or whatever it was.
Buick's version of SS. Yeah.
And it had the tack in the console and all this stuff.
Yeah, pretty neat.
And it was black. And I always like black or white interiors because then I can do whatever I want with the car.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't have a headliner in it, and it had mouse problems at one point in time, and it needed a carpet, which you always have to do if you do have a mouse problem, and stuff like that. So took it apart, and it had a fair amount of dings in it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And so did the body work on it and painted it red with a black top, and then put made a headliner for it because I couldn't get one, and made the back package tray and things like it ran really good. And that was another one that I basically sold it because I had too many cars, to be honest. But it went to Prince Albert, and the guy who came and got it was really, really happy.
It's cool. Yeah. It's amazing stuff you've done. There's a 66 Pontiac Parisienne convertible, you did as well.
Yeah, that one. That was another one of these cars that actually, when I saw it, the top was really good. So you really want, if you're going to pick on a convertible, you're best to think about the top before you do anything, because that's $3,000 right there.
Yeah.
If you got to put a top on them, it's at least $3,000. So you got to take that into consideration. This car had a almost a new top. It was in really good shape, and it all worked. Like all the electronics in the top worked. So that was good. So anyway, it was an ugly blue color, and the interior was all ripped on it, and it ran pretty well. It had a 327 in it, and it was Parisienne. I guess I'm into a trend because I paint everything red when I'm going to sell it. I guess it's part of that resell red thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, it makes them look way sharper because this was a dull blue color and it had blue ripped up interior. And so I did the interior black and white, and I did the outside red, and it required a little bit of body work here and there, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
It drove really well, and I was really surprised on this car because I didn't have a lot of money in it. When you start talking about Parisienne convertibles, I forget how much I had, but very little compared to what it should have been. So I put it on Kijiji, and I thought, well, it's going to go in a couple of days for sure. And it didn't go, and it didn't go, and it didn't go. And I'm going, what the heck? What's wrong with this car?
What's wrong? Yeah.
So anyhow, on the following Saturday, I get a phone call out of the blue, and these guys are here from Winnipeg, and they tell me that they'd come to look at this Dodge convertible, and they looked at it, and it was junk, but they didn't want to go back home with the trailer empty. And it was a father and son, and they were really nice guys. So they came over and took a look at the car and jumped in it and drove around the block a few times and said, hey, yeah, this is a really good car. And they paid me what I was asking. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, right on.
They paid me what I was asking anyway. No argument or anything.
No haggling, yep.
But it was getting late in the day, and loading it on the trailer is a pain in the ass and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't you drive back to Winnipeg? You can use my license plate and just drive it back to Winnipeg. These that's how nice these guys were.
Oh, really?
That's how nice these guys were, huh? And you could trust them. At least I trusted them. and he said, can I do that? And I said, sure. So he jumped in the car, and they drove it back to Winnipeg, and it was way in the dark by then because
sure.
it was 4 when they left, and it took them 8 hours to drive there. Phoned me back the next day. They said they cut the license plate up and tore the thing up, and said it drove like a dream.
Right on.
And so I was really happy with that. So that's the story on that car.
Man, oh man, you meet the nicest people in the car community, don't you?
Unbelievable. I've never met anybody, that I had a disliking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're not real friendly with everybody, but the fact of the matter is they're really nice people, and it's a whole culture.
And everybody seems to support everybody.
Absolutely.
I find that, and I really appreciate that, especially, like we're both members of the Shifters, and
Right.
I find the whole club, it doesn't really matter what you're into, is everybody seems to be pretty supportive of everybody else's interests, because, I like big old boats, and there's guys that really are only into, rat rod and hot rod type stuff, and there's other guys who are really only into muscle, and
Yep.
but everybody seems to be pretty supportive of what everybody else is driving and doing and working on, and that's the way it should be.
And even the kids in the tuner cars nowadays, they're part of the culture, and when you sit down and you talk to them, they really are part of the culture.
Yep.
And like I always said, some of the guys will say, those tuner cars, and I said, well, if we were 21 years old, and those tuner cars, if we were coming up now and we were 21 years old today, that's what we'd be doing.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be doing the old stuff.
Well, and I fall into the age category of guys who would normally be into that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's about what you're influenced by as a kid, right?
Right.
So you told the whole story of stuff that you were looking at, models you were building, the cars that you were around, and that
Yes.
influenced kind of what you like and what you're into.
Yep.
Well, I also grew up in the time when the movie Fast and the Furious came out.
Exactly.
And that really, not just that movie, but that certainly was one of the things that pushed the tuner idea, of import cars and the whole tuner, phenomenon, if you want to call it
Right.
that. So it's just natural that guys and gals who are millennials and stuff are just into that kind of car, and they are still driving the things that came out when we were teenagers.
Yes.
Some of them are hot rodding new stuff, or they're customizing new stuff, but there's still lots of people my age who are driving, late 80s, early 90s, or just into the 2000s vintage stuff
Right.
that they're tuning up. And that's just no different than say you back in going through the 50s.
Exactly.
Right, in the 60s. So it's just kind of it follows the generation. But that they will be eventually the car crowd someday.
They will be
right?
it. And I think it's going to be short-lived because of the electric stuff coming up.
Might be, yeah.
And the electric stuff coming up is way better. There's a whole lot of problems with it. There's a whole lot of problems with the batteries. There's a whole bunch of problems. And the people who are pushing that stuff aren't telling the truth, because how are you going to get rid of those really deadly batteries?
Yeah.
And not only that, how are you going to make the grid so you can charge all these things? And so
there's hurdles. There's certainly hurdles that got to get past, right?
But let's face it, an electric motor is 10 times better than this thing going every direction. The motors today, there's pieces in there going this way and that way, and an electric motor is just all going the same direction.
Yeah, it's so many fewer moving parts
Yes.
that does the same job.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's where we're going.
I think so.
And we would, as for the hobby, it'll still be around, but as for what we're driving, I think it'll be that.
It may just change. You know what? We're already starting to see classic cars get electric powertrains put into them in the States.
Yes.
That's already starting to become a little bit of a trend. People are buying a junked Tesla, one that's written off.
Yes.
And they're yarding out
you're going to see that.
the electric motor and the batteries, and they are customizing that into an old classic car.
Oh, you're going to see that.
Yeah, you're
There's
going to
no
see
doubt
it.
about it.
Yeah.
The other thing is that a lot of people my age had a bunch of classic cars back in the day, or were driving classic cars, are now driving new cars, if you notice that. Especially around the shifters, you notice a lot of those guys. And I don't blame them, because it's all under warranty. They still get the thrill of driving. But, I really don't want our car shows to start looking like the used car lot down the street. But anyway, I understand you get old and you can't do that, but you still want to drive something that's kind of a shadow of your past, if nothing else.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So
totally. We're getting into that too.
Okay, let's go back to our list of the cool cars you've had. This is just a selection of some of the stuff that Alan's had over the years. I think we're going out of the 60s and finally into the 70s. You had a bunch of stuff out of the 70s, well, obviously, but a few that we're talking about here. First off, there was a 72 Chev half-ton that you did. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a car that, that was a truck that I was doing for my brother. I've done a few trucks for my brother, and they've all wound up the same way in my yard. Yeah. and that's what happened with this one. This truck was on Kijiji, and it was pretty rusty and pretty ragged, but it was a pretty solid. When I say pretty rusty, it was not really rusty for what a lot of those trucks were.
Yeah.
The cab quarters were gone and stuff like that. So I got this truck, and it was another one of these bluey green things, and so I bought it, and like I said, my brother wanted it.
Yep. Right.
And he's from Ontario, so he was here, and he thought this would be a really good truck. So I got it, and it had a 327 in it, which was really good.
Yep.
And it had an R 700R transmission, which I didn't think was really good, but because I've had no end of trouble with those. But anyhow, and it didn't work. So anyway, I did the body, did the interior on the thing. I got it looking really good, as you can see the pictures there. And the only thing that they had done wrong with the transmission was they'd wired it backwards.
Oh boy!
So the wires weren't, so it shifted really bad. But anyhow, that was probably the best 700R I ever encountered in the end. But so I had this truck, and it turned out really good. The box was wood, but it was all trashed. So I had to put. I didn't put wood in it. I put a bed liner in it, but I didn't use the whole bed liner. I just put it on the floor.
Oh, cool. Yep.
So it had a plastic liner in there.
Yep.
It was just plastic on the bottom, not up the sides and all the rest of that stuff. So I cut that and put it in there, and it looked really good. So that's what I did there. But the truck was a decent truck. When my brother didn't take it, I eventually sold it. So that's what happened to that.
There was a 72 Cougar that didn't necessarily go quite so well.
That was
Okay. Up until this point, you've built all these cars. You've taken something that's been, either pushed in a ditch or, various levels of disarray.
Yep.
Put them back together and made money on all of them.
No.
No.
No. I'm kind of a member of the buy high, sell low club. Most of them I break even. I gotta say that probably breaking even is what it was
On average. Yeah.
I had 3 Dodges, lost money on all 3. I had a Road Runner, a Charger, and a Fury 3. This was back in the Miota days when I went through a lot of cars.
Yeah.
But I've had no luck with Dodge products, obviously.
Okay.
But anyway, no, I would say that I would say breaking even is more the thing.
Typical for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that's
so you've done it then just simply because you love the hobby.
That
you love the cars, you love the hobby.
And I've never done it for money. Some you've made money on. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, I've never made a dime on this.
Yeah, sure.
But some I've lost money on. And the one you're talking about there, that Cougar, is probably the one that was the stupidest move on my part. I buy this car, and another time I was hanging out at Pete Thiesen's place. I should stay away from Pete. But anyhow, it was around Christmas time, and I'm out there probably wishing him Merry Christmas or something. And this guy has a Cougar out there, a Cougar convertible, red, white top, nice interior. Well, not the driver's seat was shot. But other than that, not a bad car.
It said it's the car. It was the first year after they were good.
Yeah, after they were good. It was the first year after they were good. I don't know what year that was. But anyway, so I figured, yeah, it's a convertible. And he wanted $9,000 for it. So, okay. So I say, I'll give you 4. And he takes it. So I'm thinking, hey, man, this guy knows something about cars. I'm going to at least make $1,000 on this car.
Uh-huh.
And it had a brand new Cleveland in it. Brand new
really?
Cleveland. I don't think it had 100 miles on it. So here I am with this Cougar with a brand new Cleveland in it, and I'm going to make nothing but cash. But at the time I had a lot of cars.
Yep.
And spring comes around, and I put it on Kijiji, and I get a bunch of tire kickers, and so I'm ticked off, and it's sitting on my lawn, and it's in my way, and so I'm ticked off, and I go, first guy that shows up here with my, and what I should have did with it, to be honest with it, I should have pulled that Cleveland out of it. And actually, the Cleveland was worth more than $4,000. But the fact of the matter was the car wasn't bad. It drove nice, and the top was good, and it went up and down, and what else?
Right.
Like I said, the biggest problem with it, the worn driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I say it's just in my way. I'm getting discouraged with this thing. So this guy comes along with $2,500 cash. Got it handed him. I said, take the car.
No way.
So I lost $1,500. So that one was one of my stupid moves. One of my stupid moves. I probably made lots, but anyway, that's what happened with that car.
We should talk about, kind of last on our list here is a beautiful 72 Olds Cutlass convertible.
Beautiful car.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous car. I bought that. I bought that car in just east of the city, in Spalding, actually, is where I bought it.
Okay, yeah.
I bought it in a blizzard. Don't know why, but I got this. It was on Kijiji, and it had been on there a while, and it was after work. I worked till 5 o'clock, and I thought, well, I'm gonna go out there, and I don't know why. I thought that's about a good 3/4 of an hour out there, or half an hour. And so I drive out there in the blizzard and take a look at it and one thing and another, and it's a nice car. It's got some flaws in it, but basically a pretty good car. So we made a deal, and I gave him a check, which I don't blame him for not having, but that's the only money I had with me.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll write you a check, and when it clears the bank, you phone me and tell me I'll come and get the car. Was the deal I made on that car.
Yeah, yeah.
So, because he didn't know me from Adam, and
Sure.
how checks are.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, that's what I did. I said, I'll come and get it after the check clears, and you got the money and all the rest of it. So I said, okay, fine. So about a week later,
Hang on a sec,
I
Alan.
was going. About a week later, I phoned.
Yeah, okay,
we're
yeah.
Good. We're good.
Yep.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. About a week later, I phoned him, and asked him if the check had cleared, and he said, I didn't even check the bank. He's come and get it anyway. He said I trusted you anyway. So he didn't even check, and so I went and got it. A buddy of mine and I went and got it, and it ran sort of not all that good. It ran in about 6 cylinders, coming back into town, and but we made it here, and so we worked on the engine, cleaned it up, changed the wiring. Changed the points, changed everything in the car.
Yeah.
And got it running really good.
And it was back to 8 cylinders.
Yeah, and it ran really well. So it didn't. I painted. I guess we repainted the car white. It was white. The interior was white. It was a bucket seat car with the console and the shifter.
Now, it wasn't a 442.
It was not a 442. It was just an ordinary Cutlass S.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is what it was. But we decided to make it look like a 442. So what I did was I put the black stripes on it.
Yeah.
After we did it, and that classed it up a whole bunch. But the chrome on it was really good. I think I changed the back bumper. The front end was really good. I changed one of the grills because they were cracked. They were plastic things, and they were always breaking. Those things.
Yeah.
So I changed that. Detailed the engine compartment, painted the black and stuff like that. So it was basically just that kind of a car. Again, it was a car I had for about 3-4 years. I drove it a lot, and then again, I got a whole bunch of cars, and so some had to go.
Some had to go, right?
So that one went. But what happened with that one was, I put it on Kijiji, and 2 guys came to look at it,
Mm-hmm.
and they were brothers, and they took it for a drive, and when they came back, his brother told the guy who was going to buy it, he's nuts if he doesn't buy it, because he says, I've got a 72 Olds Chevelle, and this thing's way better than my Chevelle. And he said he paid $24,000 for his Chevelle.
Holy.
And I forget, I think it was 12 or 14 for that Olds. but he told his brother, "You're nuts if you don't buy this thing."
Yeah.
And he did buy it. He bought it right there. So that was the story on that Oldsmobile.
You've had cars that have stuck around for a little while. What's the, are some of the cars that are in your collection now, are they forever cars?
I believe they are.
Yeah. The Meteor and the Studebaker.
And my El Camino. My El Camino, I've had it for about 10 years. And I had to make a choice between it and the Camaro convertible this year because I just, again, trying to cut down my cars. I think, the Dodge I've given to my son.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gone. I actually have given the Studebaker to my brother, who never takes anything. So so it's still here. So that's kind of what he comes from Ontario every once in a while. Am I close to him?
Yeah.
Comes from Ontario every once in a while and drives it, but I keep convincing him that he should take it, but he never does. So it's probably part of the family. The Meteor has just been around basically this summer. I finished it last fall.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, you never say never, but I'm sure that it's a keeper.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking that's it. I'd like to get one more convertible because I've always had convertibles, and sometimes I've had two or three. And the other and the other kind of cars that, like I said, I had 9, 59, and 60 Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
I've had many El Caminos right from 59 to now, and now the one I have now is the one I've always wanted.
Is it?
So yes, so it's a prototype car, and it's the one that I've always wanted.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So it's not going anywhere. But I think probably there'd be a convertible. If I see something that in a convertible, maybe a Thunderbird convertible.
It might just come home with you.
Yeah, and maybe a Thunderbird convertible too, because that would kind of fill in both of my joys. So something like that probably be still out there looking for me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, I got to say thank you for joining me and for sharing all the fun stories and this crazy, time you've had over the years putting stuff together, and what a cool collection you've had and amazing stuff you've done with all these cars.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
It has been, totally. And thank you for listening to Bald Tires, a proud member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Of course, wherever you found this podcast, you're going to find more episodes of Bald Tires. You can always go to see pictures of all the cars we've talked about, jthomasauto.ca. Like and subscribe to this podcast, and don't forget you can find me on Instagram as well as Facebook. I'm Jay Thomas. Thanks for listening to Bald Tires.